Well, Jack Everson, pleased to meet you again. Just saw you on Monday, and I first met you when you were Mayor Jack Everson, or at least running for the office, and now you are Commissioner Jack Everson. So I wanted to talk to you mainly because of the paper mill crisis. And between you and David, I think you're contributing a lot of experience to the issue. David is very active, very knowledgeable about development, economic development. You had a previous career, and you corrected me, not as a hatchet man, but please explain what your job there was and the correct term for it.
Okay. The term hatchet man is not usually found on an organizational chart.
No.
So usually it's a name given to somebody that creates change in an operation. And I'll just speak on the spectrum of manufacturing. I worked for Campbell Soup, owns Corning, Cargo Tech, which is an international company, one of those smaller companies in my career, and I took to continuous improvement early on in my career because I had a bachelor's degree in physics and a minor in psychology. So I took a very structured way on understanding how the world worked and then applying some of those same kind of critiques to psychology to figure out how people work. Because I knew I was going to go into manufacturing, and I knew I wanted to do well in that realm and produce the best outcomes for the companies that I work for. So I got the term as a growth manager on some organizational charts. I was usually a plant manager. I was director of operations over multiple sites, or vice president of operations, vice president of development.
Okay, is growth manager the industry standard to describe?
That's a term that narrows down the focus of what we did. And it was my job to go into underperforming plants as a plant manager or director of operations, so I had responsibility of the plant and figure out what was wrong, being unprofitable, and bring it back to profitability.
So you worked on efficiency.
Right. There's three areas: people's, product, process. There's things going wrong in most of the time all of those areas, and it was my job to figure out what that was, work with the people there, get it taken care of, get it fixed, which often is not getting rid of people. And that's where the term hatchet man kind of comes into play.
You said hatchet man is mainly for people who just want to pull profits out of something, they just cut.
That's what's happening at Pixel, yeah. That's a private equity group. It's their job to go in and sell off the assets and close down the plant.
HIG Capital.
Right.
In which Bernie Moreno had really criticized and apparently got the concession of delaying the closure.
Well, nobody likes a private equity group except the shareholders. They like the profitability that it is, and if you're a scrap man with a well-running plant, a plant that has legacy, that has history, and that's a big part of the community, it hurts. And it's not a real popular position.
The focus is not on making things more efficient so you get good profits, but just pulling money out.
Right. Pulling all the money they can, even down to taking the steel out of the building and selling it out for scrap. That's where some of them go to. I don't know if that's what they have in mind for this property down on the south end of town or not, but that's pretty much a modus operandi with private equity groups.
Is that more of a late 20th century, 21st century thing, or has that been throughout?
Private equity groups came probably to relevance in the 70s or 80s, and not the 1900s, the 20th century. So, this is, I think it's important for your readers and listeners to understand how we got here. And it's not because the workers did a bad job. It's not because of mismanagement at the local level. It's a dying product line. 60% of their production today is carbonless paper. How many people use carbonless forms?
I may use it once a year for the last 5 years or so, maybe not even that much.
It's an expensive way to do that because the average carbonless form costs 65 cents each form. To make another copy is $0.0125. So you're not getting good economy of scale purchasing cardinalist form and doing it the way that they did it in the 20s and 30s of the last century.
You mean like a photocopy, make a copy
Right,
of
make
it?
a copy on a printer. That's how you make multiple copies today. I equate it to being in the business of producing payphone telephone booths when everybody's walking around with a cell phone in their pocket. That's where they are at with the product they've been deemed by their corporate ownerships to produce. So that should have really changed back in Midwestvaco or New Page days and evolved into a different product line that is more 21st century relevant.
So back in the first decade, 15 years ago.
Mm-hmm. I'd say, yeah, back in the mid-2000s.
So what continued this mistaken marketing
Well,
focus?
it takes a tremendous amount of capital to convert product lines into a manufacturing organization. That's why the building itself and the equipment in the building are so hard to sell, because they're meant for one thing. You don't build Toyotas in a Ford factory. You have a different product line that's entirely different equipment set up in an entirely different way. If it's not paper making and something else, you pretty much have to scrape the floors clean and start from scratch. And that's if the building's laid out properly. So this is something where
So they kept making what they could without
right,
the expense of
what
retooling.
major investment, yeah. Just to clear that out down there is estimated to be $37 million.
You mean demolish everything?
Not
like
demolish, remove everything off the floor and do what they have to do to get it ready as an open floor space.
That? You mean leave the buildings, just empty them out?
Right. Demoing the building and then, more importantly, remediating the property environmentally is in the multi-millions. But we do have, and you've reported on this with Tammy, that we do have a memorandum of understanding with HIG, signed by HIG, that they will clean up the site and demo the building and make it ready to rehabilitate into an entirely different type of facility for manufacturing and sell it to an entity identified by the community. That's not the city, that's not the county, for a dollar.
Which I've been told the land bank might be one to handle that.
They are best equipped by the laws of Ohio to handle the transfer of property. The development of the property will go probably to the Port Authority.
Okay. And we have these tools like the Port Authority and the land bank that have been developed only maybe in the last 10 years?
Yes.
And less?
And that is a contingency, because I have to tell you, my wife's a realtor, and if we decided as a couple that we were going to move at sometime in the end of the year, in April, and so then we got pushed up. Well, we had to move in the end of August. But in that less than 2-month period, we had 18 showings of our home. That's the effort of Jobs Ohio and Ohio Southeast. That is the remarkable job they are doing for us. The activity of people going in and out of that plant looking to purchase it and move it forward as a paper making are astounding. So it's, this isn't a lack of effort or a lack of work. We're coordinating on the city county side of it to get the things lined up for any contingency that comes up. No way, no how are we giving up on this. And we're talking about some innovative things that could happen down there if this doesn't work out, where it sells to another paper maker, which, I think that'd be good for the employees for a little while, but it's just kicking the can down the road again.
You don't want to be the buggy whip manufacturer when the Model T is coming
Exactly, yeah.
And the Model T is already out.
So, we've laid ideas out. We've identified 20 products that are made in China, for instance, that should be made in the United States because there's high consumption here. We've laid out a manufacturing campus down there, close to what the Kenworth model looks like, with a main assembly plant and all the supply companies around it.
Which are, I think Tammy told me Kenworth requires them to be within 2 miles.
Exactly. And that's for logistics, that's for efficiency of operations. Because the opposite of that is you buy a container load of parts from China, all the same item. The one goes into your car. And that is paid for when you receive it. And it sits on a shelf for the better part of a year until you use all that. Well, you've invested in that inventory. And if it's one part out of 5,000 that goes into your product, you're carrying a lot of inventory costs there that you can't recoup the cost of paying for all that at one time, and you spread that out over a year. Kenworth, on the other hand, they order 20 parts from their suppliers and puts those on trucks that night and sells them the next day and invoices them. That's tremendous cash flow. That's a healthy company model. And that's the kind of similar type of situation we would like to see developed on the south end of town. And then there's another real innovative mid-21st century idea that we have in front of Jobs, Ohio and Ohio Southeast that until that develops more, I'm going to hold it right there. But we're not dormant on this at all.
Okay, well, I'm not accusing you of that.
I didn't say that you were. I'm giving you information.
I did cover the paper mill response team when it was an open session. Mm-hmm. You've been in executive session the last several times, which you guys said that's good because you're getting closer to action and you have to protect the negotiations.
Right, and we're also eliminating things that won't work. And as a turnaround agent, a growth manager, that's where companies find money to make the changes. They don't go out and get loans. They don't use grants. If they want to fund that from the inside, they stop doing things that don't work. And that's what we discuss in those executive sessions. We have to entertain all ideas. And we do that in a constructive way. We want to listen to everybody. We want to weigh the pros and cons to it to make our decisions. And then we also put those out there in what-if scenarios. What happens if we do this, and how does that look 5 years from now? What cause and effect does it have on the community, on the culture, on the people? And we have to weigh those things. And a single sentence out of that taken out of context, like, hey, that's what they're going to do, when we're not even really considering it, we're just weighing the impact of it. It gets to unnecessary struggles with social media and things like that.
Well, as long as you're following the sunshine law,
we are
okay to let you keep me out.
Yeah.